a vulcanised edge. Oh, I think I'm exhausted. Come back to features and benefits. So the biggest one is low cost and low weight, especially when you're doing re-roofing on metal. I can't say that that's true re-roofing on concrete. Concrete, because drilling in mechanically is a lot slower. But the beauty of some of these is we can go over contaminated roofs. Some of the products have a fleece on the back, so we don't have to strip a roof to go over it to put a membrane system in using mechanical fasteners. No plasticizers, got to be a benefit, no weight loss over time. Stable chemical structure, so you can come back after several years. Membrane is easy to fix. Light colours, we've talked about solar reflectivity. In some of these systems too, the fire retardant is a halogen, which is considered not the best for the environment. Just as an example, butyl rubber, a lot of carbon black in it. So for that to keep burning or to initiate it, it's got to have an external heat source, like a flame. If you drop the cigarette onto it, it might smoulder and it goes out. TPO, much the same. The TPO also contains magnesium hydroxide, which as the product burns, releases water and stops the spread of the flame. Chemical resistance, I haven't really touched on that, but I think you'll be surprised to find that most of them will easily accommodate most of the pollutants that we have in our atmosphere without a problem. Biggest thing with all of these is solvent-based products may damage it, so we try and not put solvents on roofs. We also did some testing with different thicknesses of, when I say we, sorry, we're supported by Firestone. They did this testing and they're just showing different systems. Because Firestone don't do PVC, they don't have that information, but essentially there's a number of passes for the different systems under different types of insulation. We carry the PIR, the EPS, expanded polystyrene, you can get locally. So these membranes will work with a whole variety of insulation. I was talking to one of the people outside before. Do you know how hard it is to make a CPD course without actually mentioning brand names? I can't quite do it. But anyway, I just wanted to show some of the things about thermal properties. So PIR, high compressive strength compared to mineral wool. Water absorption, it's not really absorbent. Walkability, yes, you can walk on it. It's not going to crush under a normal single person. Long term, yeah, good benefits in the long term. And lightweight. So just a quick look at some of the things when you're considering membranes. Insulation can go with it. Which insulation do you use? Most important things, all of these single ply membranes must be applied to structurally sound solid substrates, including concrete, metal roofing. In New Zealand, they do a lot of plywood decks and plywood roofs with butyl rubber. That's understandable. I've had 30 years history doing it. It works very well. We don't. We look at mainly metal or concrete. The idea of the solid structural platform to put these membranes on is that gives you the fire protection rating. We've been to a couple of the bigger fire engineers and each one of them has come back and said because the membrane is on the structural roof and the structural roof is forming the fire barrier, the deemed to comply or deemed to satisfy criteria applies to these. So if you're using them and you're asking for certificates, next to impossible to get, because the fire engineers don't want to test it by itself. They'll test it as a setup on a roof, and we can get opinions on that. But the general one is deemed to satisfy apply. If we're doing it on walls, yeah, different scenario, yeah, got to get it tested. But we do have a lot of material from overseas. The best answer we got was, we've done all this. These tests are very similar to the Australian test in what they are actually doing in time and so on, and the angle of the test. But Australia is only 2% of the worldwide construction market. We're not going to test for Australia. Take it or leave it. You need to be aware of it. We've gone to the engineers here. The answer is, as a roofing system, deemed to satisfy criteria applies. Quick comparison to bitumen versus TPO. Weight, easy to install, no flame. Important, a lot of these membranes have a degree of vapour transmission. So if there's any dampness, gradually it'll go. So when we put in a membrane with mechanical fixings, you'll see like a pillow effect, and that will tighten up over time as the moisture vapour comes from underneath. Walkability, fantastic for most of these membranes. And remember, I said this is sort of trying to find some common ground. So a lot of these comments apply to the other single ply membranes as well, compared to bitumen. Liquid membranes versus a sheet membrane. Main issue are getting the thickness correct. Many of them don't have a UV stability in themselves. I've got to have another layer. They have good elongation, but again, the elongation test was an unbonded sample, mainly put over concrete, just little things. So sheet membranes, a lot more versatile. I love this picture. This is one of the new weldable under-tile sheet membranes, the reflection pool in Sydney. So all of these panels, the joints were leaking and so on, so we did a whole system, and it's been tiled and it doesn't leak. So in summary, these are the sort of things where we'd suggest you consider a single ply membrane. Where you need lightweight system, where you might have some building movement, you know it's there, it might be a re-roofing situation, you can do it. Where your roof area is large and the large membrane sheets are very quick to install compared to bitumen. Re-roofing, structural standing seam metal roof assemblies. One of the things that I'd point out, if we're doing new metal roofs, the thickness of the metal needs to be up about 0.75 millimetre. Current manufacturer in Australia, about 0.42, 0.48. It is a problem. We can get the thicker metal, but if you go for the thinner, you might have to put a few more, supporting structures underneath. It's a design issue. If we've got time, yeah, it's better to bring in the thicker metal. Then we can drill straight into the metal iron roofing rather than the support framework. Doesn't really apply so much here, but roofing in cold weather with mechanical fasteners is a great thing with these membranes. If you're looking for green roofs, the landscaping on top, yeah, we can do it there. Light colours for high solar reflectivity, energy efficiencies. So, in summary, that's why we look at these. Thank you for that. I made it. Okay. I know that's a lot, but it was just an overview. So, any questions? Fantastic. Must have got across. Thanks much.